Hey guys, this week's episode is with Molly Venter. She is one of my all-time favorite singer-songwriters. Her bands include Molly Venter, Red Molly, and Goodnight Moonshine. She had a fabulous home birth that we're going to dig into, and then she found out she was pregnant with twins and birthed completely opposite of her first birth and her twin birth at the hospital. So let's get to it. What does a contraction feel like? How do I know if I'm in labor? And what does a day of labor look like? Wait, is this normal? Hey, I'm Heidi. My best friends call me Hides. I'm a certified birth doula, host of this podcast, and author of Birth Story, an interactive pregnancy guidebook. I have supported hundreds of women through their labor and deliveries, and I believe every one of them and you deserves a microphone and a stage. So here we are. Listen each week to get answers to these tough questions. Birth Story, where we talk about pregnancy, labor, deliveries, where we tell our stories and share our feelings, and of course, chat about our favorite baby products and motherhood. And because I'm passionate about birth outcomes, you will hear from some of the top experts in labor and delivery. Whether you are pregnant, trying desperately to get pregnant, or you just love a good birth story, I hope you will stick around and be part of this birth story family. Okay, before we get started, I just wanted to thank Anja of useanja.com for sponsoring this episode. If you did not catch my episode with Catherine Cross, who created the company Anja, I hope you'll rewind and listen all about cord blood banking with Use Anja. She is offering all Birth Story listeners $100 off their private cord blood banking with code BIRTHSTORY. Now, let me tell you a little personal story about Anja and private cord blood banking. I am a parent of a child with cerebral palsy. I did not know he was going to have cerebral palsy from a birth injury until after he was born. If I had chosen cord blood banking, the outcome of my child could be very different if he had access to his own stem cells. Those are blank cells that can go to repair and rewrite damaged cells, like in my son Jagger's with his brain injury. It can also be used with siblings. So cord blood banking, there's a 75% chance it will match with a sibling. There's a 50% chance it'll match with the parent. So yeah, like you. Like if you get one of these 85 diseases that right now we know stem cells can help, that can help you too, not just your child and not just your child's siblings. You will be able to use the stem cells at some point. So I don't want you to look at it as an insurance policy either. So I'm thinking like, oh, my 5 left knee surgeries. Like I could inject some stem cells in there at some point in the future and help my knee out. There's a lot of research and development going on with PCOS, hair loss, anti-aging, cancers, tumors, lymphomas, along with the 85 known diseases that we have already proven that stem cells can help to cure, save lives, support lives and diseases. But what makes Anja different? Catherine Cross, her personal story, why she started Anja. There is a huge community. It is tech enabled. There's a beautiful brand. The user experience is incredible. So like I said, if you do not know about cord blood banking, please rewind and listen to Catherine's episode. And if you decide to do cord blood banking, please use code BIRTHSTORY for $100 off at useanja.com. useanja.com. All right, here's your episode. Welcome, Molly, to the Birth Story podcast. How are you?
Thank you, Heidi. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited to talk about it. I haven't really gotten to.
I know. Well, that makes me really happy because I reached out to you a long time ago, and it was like maybe right after you gave birth or right before even. Yeah. And I saw on Instagram you were pregnant with twins. And let's just tell the audience right now, I am a big fan of Molly Venter, who is a singer-songwriter. And I'm not even sure what year it was. So let's say we're recording this in 2021. So let's say maybe like 2007, 8, 9, 10-ish. I don't know, somewhere in that range. You came to Charlotte, North Carolina, and you played at this tiny little venue, which is 1 mile from my house, called the Evening Muse.
Yes.
Do you remember that?
I'm going to cry. I totally remember that. That was even longer ago than that.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I came to see one of my musician friends. Not that I wasn't there to see you, Molly, but
of course.
You were a bonus. I came to see one of my friends, Bucky Hayes.
Yes.
Bucky, I don't know he's been my friend since we were like 5. So Bucky Hayes in the radio, Bucky Hayes band. I don't know. He's had a couple of things. So Bucky was in town from Brooklyn and he was playing 1 mile from my house. So I invited his whole band. I'm like, oh, just come stay with me. And then you guys will play. And then we went. And then you were one of the singer-songwriters that got up there. And it was one of those perfectly timed moments, Molly. I think I had just had a major breakup. I was in a super bad place. And your music, I think you played like Love Me Like You Mean It. And I don't know, each song I was like speaking deeply to my soul. So
yes.
That's how I know who you are.
Well, that means that we were like going through the same life things at the same time, because that was my season of that kind of change and then processing through song. And then you were right there.
Oh, I love it. So your albums really helped me through several breakups, following that season. There was more seasons to come. Yeah. And so just kind of, you're very good with your lyrics, with growth, personal emotion, maybe putting into words and song what we're all thinking and feeling, but just can't quite pinpoint how to say it. And
thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so glad to hear that. And
you're welcome. That's your gift. It's been great. So tell us a little bit more about, now many years have gone by. So who are you? Where do you live? What do you do? All the things right now.
Yeah, all the things. I grew up in the Northeast, so I talk kind of fast. Then I went out to like Idaho after college and then spent 10 years in Austin, Texas, punctuated by like a year in Mexico. And I have always just loved writing songs and singing. And so after kind of living all my 20s in Austin, and by the way, I was also sober for that whole time. So it was just like a huge growth explosion. And then in my early 30s, and I was always playing music professionally, driving around in my car, like sleeping in Walmart parking lots, all that good stuff. And then I joined up with a more established band that was called Red Molly. And because of that, I started spending a lot more time back in the Northeast, which is where, well, actually at a music conference, I met my husband, who's also a musician. And I ended up settling back in the same town that I grew up in, New Haven, Connecticut. Never thought I would be back here, but it's really nice to have family around when you have kids. And actually, like, there's cool parts of everywhere. You don't have to just live in San Francisco or Austin to have like a thriving cultural life. And we love it. Who knew?
Yeah.
That's where I started.
Who knew? Well, I live in like the arts district of Charlotte, North Carolina, and that's where that Evening Muse is. It's called NODA or North Davidson. It's a really artsy, fun area. We've got a pretty bumpin' scene. I think here too. Yeah. So
you do. And Charlotte's on the rise. Like Charlotte's got a buzz right now. So
yeah. Cool. So you said you were sober. So does that mean previously you had not been?
Oh yeah, right. Sure. No, drank, crazy amounts during college, then stopped completely, 12-step programs, all that good stuff for 10 years. And then I kind of experimented going back into what was drinking like, because everything's going so well. I've got a husband, I'm having a baby, and it wasn't great. So I don't drink again. I just feel like when I'm not drinking, I have all the synchronicity happening and I'm reading the next book and I'm having the next good conversation. Like it forces me to be uncomfortable and then to find what will truly, truly help. So, but when I'm drinking, or so for the several years after I had Otis, I was kind of, I mean, not dangerously drinking, but just like drinking enough and watching enough Netflix that like I didn't have to do much, I just didn't have to like think that hard or work on that much. But it wasn't that, it felt pretty stale and flat. Like nothing was that bad, but nothing was really that good. And so now on the other side of it, I'm like, oh, right. This is how the world used to look like in hypercolor. And that means sometimes I'm still just like a ridiculous, like, I have a short temper. Like there are things about me that aren't so great and I have to look at them because I live with someone. But anyway, at least I can then try to do better. And life is better.
Well, I think that a lot of the moms that are listening to this podcast can absolutely relate to these different seasons that we have. You know, I will never forget having my first child and going to my 6-week follow-up. And I was telling my midwife, like, I'm just having like a lot of anxiety. I'm having trouble sleeping. I mean, like, who doesn't have trouble sleeping when you're nursing every 2 hours? And she was like, do you drink? And I was like, well, I mean, like, no, because I was pregnant and I'm nursing. And she was like, your prescription, and she wrote it out. She was like, is to like go have a glass of wine or a cocktail tonight. And I was like, oh, okay. And so I think like my doctor told me to do that, which probably wasn't, or my midwife, which probably wasn't the most healthy thing in the world. But I think a lot of moms fall into this, right? Like we're stressed, we're kind of like blah, we haven't taken a shower, like we're covered in milk. Like, why not sit and watch Netflix and drink wine?
Yeah, it's like such a relief. I mean, and then especially after this year, like I know other moms who are like, I'm using medicinal marijuana at night. That's what this season is about. I'm like, go for it, like whatever. And so I can totally relate to that. And then also there's just a social lubricant element of drinking. So when you get together with other moms and you finally start going, blah, 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 like that feels so good too. So I'm definitely not anti-drinking at all. In fact, I like to be around people who are drinking because it makes me less inhibited. I like get a secondary fun spark from it. And for me, it works too well to quell all the anxiety. So then you fall into a pattern because you're like, how else do I say good night to the day? Like, how else do I kind of stop stressing about every little thing? And actually, like, so alcohol really works, like for that little bit of time to like de-stress, like, thank God. But then I would have all the same stresses later and maybe I wouldn't feel so great. So it's actually like trickier to find other ways to de-stress. But ultimately for me, it's working better.
So what Molly and I are saying to all of you guys is don't go down that rabbit hole because we've already done that. And then we're here to tell you it doesn't work. But what does work are things like Insight Timer, the Women's Meditation Network, maybe listening to some Molly Venter before bed and opening up your journal and writing a little bit, all those things. Today, my partner came into the kitchen and I was like in a mood and they needed to talk about something. And I was like, no, and Enya was playing. And she's like, oh, it's Enya time.
Nice.
I'm like, it is. Yay. So Molly, how can everyone find you on Instagram? Like if they want to, can we just say, I can't say the word Alexa or she'll start talking to me right now. But can my robot just, if I say play Molly Venter, play Red Molly.
So if you play Molly Venter, you will get really old stuff that if you are in your 20s or 30s and going through big breakups, Google Molly, go find Molly Venter stuff. But if you are more in the family style, I would look up Goodnight Moonshine because that's the act that I do with my husband. And that's like, whole albums about like post-honeymoon relationship stuff, like, and then a little bit of like parenting thing for the baby stage. And then just all, grief over a passing parent. So it's just a lot more adult themes, for lack of a better word. I'm thinking my next album is going to be called like Adulting. Because it's like there's still plenty of rich life drama that is outside of just like the kind of breakup cycle, So there's all this growth happening goodnightmoonshine.com and then Goodnight Moonshine on Spotify. Instagram is Molly Venter. So what I do though every week is I do a Patreon page, and that's where I pour my heart and soul into a new song a week, which is often an original and sometimes a cover. And then I write an essay. And you can see a lot of them are, quote, public, or you could sign up for $3 a month if you were really into it. And that's patreon.com/Molly Venter.
I am part of your group. I love it. I get my weekly emails. It's amazing. That's a lot of creativity to do weekly, just FYI, with 3 kids.
Thank you. It is. And it saves my life having to do it. It also makes me a little crazy Thursday night. And I'm like yelling at my husband that I'm going to be up too late, but it saves me to do it.
Oh, it's so good. I think your next album is like for a mature audience only. You know?
Yeah. Or for an aspiring mature audience.
There we go. Even better. So let's get into your birth stories, because this is where our lives intersect, right?
Yeah,
for 12 or 15 years, I've just been listening to this wonderful music that's really helped me on my journey. And then someone that I really have looked to for 15 years or so to help tap into my emotions and help me emote more had a baby. So I had to reach out to you. So here we are. So let's go. You have 3 children. We have a singleton, and then you had twins. And so I know everyone's going to be really excited about the twin birth.
So
and
exciting.
We're going to get to that second. All right. So everybody just has to listen in, because birth is about, and motherhood is about journeying to that next thing. So we really can't get there. And it's Manny and Ravenel, right? Your twins. We can't get to their story until we honor Otis's story, which is your first son. So how old were you? Let's start there.
I was 35, and my dad had just passed, and that was a hospital thing. And I just came out of that being like, why are we doing birth and death in a hospital? Like, why are we doing this? I don't like it. It feels sterile. It doesn't feel human and embodied. So anyway, that was really my thing, that I didn't want to go to a hospital because I had just been in one. So I found these amazing midwives who only do home births. I never even thought anything of it. I was only listening to all of the good midwife stuff that was going around. Like, I didn't have any fears about it. I didn't have any apprehension. I was a tri-varsity athlete in college. So I had all this confidence, like, oh, I'm just going to squat it out. It's just going to be so rad. Like, I'm just going to bust through this birth. And I mean, the pregnancy was like nothing. I toured until 8.5 months. Like, it was just so easy. And then, my water broke and Otis was out 6 hours later. But I will just tell you, so it was 6 hours, start to finish, and completely uncomplicated. And I pretty much the entire time was sobbing on the floor of the bathtub, just like and at first I was like, I can't do this. My husband's like, well, we don't have another plan. Like, I had given myself the out, like, oh, if I'm in labor for 2 days, I'll go to the hospital. But there was this thought in my mind that was like, this is too embarrassing if you go to the hospital after like an hour. It was just the ultimate leveler. I mean, I came out of that thinking, I can't believe that this is what people have to go through to have babies. Like, women are fleeing their country, giving birth on the side of the road like this. I felt a little betrayed by the universe. And like I said, I mean, there was nothing bad happened. Like, it was beautiful. And I'm so glad. It was really nice not to have to be in a hospital. It was nice not having to like leave a hospital and try to get checked out of a hospital. Such a nightmare. But I think people always just assume, oh, you had that just magical, blissful thing. And I did. I absolutely did. And also, it was definitely the most traumatizing thing that I had. Because it's just like so raw and real.
How soon after your father passing did you give birth?
Did I give birth? It was a couple of years.
Okay.
It was like 3 years or something.
It wasn't right away. Well, I guess really time doesn't even matter.
Yeah. No, but people say like,
yeah, if we have things that come up, right? Like,
yeah.
I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, that we talk about birth, or especially unmedicated birthing in transition, the just really hard labor, the super intense when the baby's descending through the pelvis, dilating the cervix all the way. Those powerful sensations send us into another universe. We call it labor land. We call it the labor zone. They say you go out into the stars in the galaxy and you find your baby's soul and then you bring it back. I mean, and we come to the other side of it and we're like, it was amazing. It was empowering. It was all of this. But so often as a doula, I'm with a mom. And I was just with a mom at a home birth and it was a 48-hour home birth. On her second. It's very, her baby Luna just needed some time to come. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And at the end, she falls back and she just says, that was so hard, And so I want you to go back with us for the people that are listening and talk about how you knew you were in labor and how you got to the bathtub crying on your hands.
Oh yeah. Well, I knew it was pretty crazy. My water broke. So I got out of bed going, woohoo, like just water everywhere. And we called the midwife. She lived close. She actually checked me then and was like, okay, go back to bed. But an hour later, when I say the contractions started, like they started at a 9 or they started at an 8. Like there was no easing into it. So for me, it was just like, what is happening? I'm being turned inside out. I mean, so everything, I'll get to the twin birth later, but it was just so specific. I feel like everyone's birth is so specific, and all the things that you worry about maybe happening at your birth, it's like those don't happen, but something else crazy happens, that you could never have foreseen. So it was just, of course, random and unique, my own set of circumstances. So I was living in my mom's house and my dad had put in the largest water heater like on the market. And so I just turned the shower on and I just said to myself, like, this is never going to go cold. Like it will literally never go cold. So I get to lie on here with the shower on me for the whole thing. Now, one of my midwives was really good at like the lower kind of back massage, and that did help. My husband was literally frantically like reading through the book he was supposed to have read, like squeezing my feet, like in the moment, and trying to talk me through it. For me, it was all the dilating process is like the most emotionally insane. And then once it's pushing, like, cause I was in the tub and then all of a sudden I was pushing, like, I didn't decide to push. All of a sudden it was like, ah! Like, and she's like, okay, let me check. Yeah, you're good to go. Like, was that scary? Cause your body just started pushing. I'm like, yeah, I know, it's scary. But the pushing part for me wasn't the crazy part. That was like, oh, that's this very searing outside pain that like I kind of know about that, but the whole inside, your whatever your uterus does, I still don't even whatever is going on inside.
It's a muscle. It's a muscle. It just contracts.
Yeah, to me that felt like being turned inside out and very emotional. That kind of pain, like, because I can take different kinds of pain, no problem, but this was different for me. Other people,
but you made it.
But I made it. Yes, and that is what the midwife said. I was a little pissed that they hadn't told me it might be that bad. And they're like, well, you never know what it will be. So you don't want to tell people it's going to be so rough. But they said, it's kind of good to start your motherhood journey thinking, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, and then doing it. Because that is going to happen over and over and over. And of course, I thought about it like night 2 when I'm falling out of bed, like trying to feed my baby every hour and a half, like their voices like echo through my head a lot. And then every stage of parenting, you've got something new that you're like, I can't do this. I don't have the skills to do this. That was really cool. In hindsight, it was all perfect and very cool.
I think it is. I mean, there's so many beautiful poets that have described it and songwriters that have written about it. But like this inauguration into motherhood, like this saying goodbye to maiden, like the transformation that occurs in just a few hours. And if you choose for your body or you allow for your body to not intervene in that process, it is very, very hard. And it is absolutely doable. And yes, throughout motherhood, we tell ourselves over and over again, like, but I did that thing. And so I get through that. I've had significant traumas in my life since I had an unmedicated birth. And I thank my child every day for that opportunity to have been broken down in his birth, really, because it set the bar for like the next trauma I was going to experience and the strength that I knew I had. I was like, okay, this is going to be hard, but I know I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And you can just keep doing it. It's so beautiful. Now, your labor was very short, right? I don't want any of my listeners to think like, 6 hours.
Exactly.
But
very short.
what we have proven in data is that when home births are much shorter than hospital
Interesting. I
births,
believe that. Yeah.
right? The stress hormones of adrenaline and cortisol aren't in play when we're having to like get in the car and go to the hospital and fluorescent lights and talk to people and answer questions. Like you're in your own home and or your mom's home and your element with this hot water heater and your husband and your midwife and like all those other variables are gone. So your body's able to unfold. What I hear from your story, Molly, though, is 100%. If I was your doula, and I could be wrong, but I feel like you had a lot of pre-work that your body did prior to going into labor. I would have guessed that you would have been significantly dilated with a soft, ripe cervix when your water broke.
That's possible.
You went straight into transition, it sounds like. You went to hard labor and transition. So it sounds to me when my clients have this, they had early labor, lots of cramping and kind of Braxton Hicks and kind of for like a week or two.
Yeah, you're right. I did have a bunch of Braxton Hicks for like a week. Yeah.
Yeah. And those Braxton Hicks, while annoying, they really soften the cervix and they ripen it and that kind of thing. And then
I liked them. I felt like they were like a squeeze. I thought they were cool.
Yes. A hug,
Yeah.
That's early labor. So you just had yours piecemeal. Like you had your early labor, it sounds like, kind of over time. And then it was like, boom.
That's probably right. Because when people said, oh, the contractions start slowly, I'm like, no, they don't. They hit me like a brick wall.
So you guys, Molly experienced PROM, which is premature rupture of the membranes. That means your first sign of active labor was your water breaking. Now, data shows you should start contractions anywhere from immediately to 6 to 8 hours. And yours started within an hour, right?
Yeah, like an hour later.
Yeah. So right on track. Amazing. So did you end up birthing in the tub?
No, I got out. I pushed his head out sitting on the toilet.
Okay.
And then we tried a little bit like on the floor on my side and nothing was happening. So I sat on the toilet, so just pushed the head right out and then got to my hands and knees, pushed the whole baby out. They had to be like, there's your baby. Pick up your baby. But yeah, it was amazing. And I could always tell my son, you were born right there on that spot.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. So do you still live in this house?
No, my mom, we bought our own little house, but it was good to us musicians to be able to live with my mom. And then she was there for the first year of my kid's life because we don't have time to talk about all that, but you have all that. And then you're supposed to then go right into raising a baby. Like, this is where I think this was not by design. Like, you would have had a whole tribe and maybe an auntie could show you nurse a little bit. And then this person would be making food. And then but to have you've just carried the baby and then you labor the baby. And then all of a sudden you're responsible for every part of the baby's life. I mean, to me, it seems a little intense. And we did it. And my mom was living with me. And so that helped a lot. But yeah.
Yeah, this is where I get a little sad about life in general, right?
Yes.
Like I talk all the time about how I'm like, why do I have a lawnmower and my next door neighbor has a lawnmower and then their next door neighbor has a lawnmower? I'm like, why don't we just have a lawnmower for the neighborhood? You know what I mean? And then it's like, we each have all these things. Yeah. So we're a little crazy and different. And everyone's like, oh, you're modern family. And I'm like, oh, no. So we live in the jokingness of a compound. Okay. So here, there's 2 houses on our property. And my ex-spouse, my partner is my ex-spouse, which is a little crazy. Yeah. Those that listen to the podcast know the story. But my husband transitioned to be a woman. And so they're now my ex-spouse. But, we're still partners. We're still friends. So we have 2 different houses. So then I live with my mom, my sister, the kids, and then the kids just kind of float back and forth between wherever they want to go on that given day. Yeah. And I have all this help, right?
Yes.
And I have so many friends that are so alone.
Yes.
And my doula clients, and they feel just like what you felt, Molly. They get home or they are, they get home from the hospital or they're at home birthing and then they look up and there's only one person there, maybe their spouse.
Yeah. Right. Or maybe they have to go right back to work. I know.
Yeah,
it's a lot. I mean, so if people can hire postpartum doulas, great. If you can call your friends and have them stay with you for a little while, like
Yeah. And this is what I want people to hear. I have my doula clients all the time that are like, I just want everyone to not come for like a week or two after the birth. And I'm like, oh no, that's the wrong thinking. You want all the help the week or two after the birth.
Yes.
Then you want people to go away once you get the hang of it.
Right.
So.
And you don't want to have to entertain anyone. You want the kinds of people who will just come in and literally like bring you food and do the laundry. And because you don't really want to be getting out of bed. I mean, that was the interesting thing. Like I was 35 and my body, I was really healthy. And it didn't feel good to walk for like 2 weeks, and breastfeeding was hard at first and all that stuff. And I came back quicker with my twins, which was a vaginal birth. Anyway, we should jump onto that.
Yeah. I want to hear all about it.
That was a wild ride.
Before twins, though, I need to know, did you do anything with your placenta?
Oh, with Otis, we did. I was cheap, so we just froze it, and then my husband would chop it up and make these meat smoothies. Like he would just put it in the blender with like day 3. He's like, "You seem a little down. Let's make you a little meat smoothie." I don't know.
Him.
I don't know, but we did. And then with the twins, they wouldn't let me. They were all hospitals, much different.
Ooh, so we moved from home birth to hospital birth. Now I got to know all the things because I was assuming we were a twin home birth.
Uh-oh. So are you disappointed you asked me now?
No, I'm not disappointed. Okay. Now I'm just very curious. Okay, I'm just breaking in for just a minute in case you forgot the code. So the code is birth story at useanja.com for $100 off if you choose to privately bank your cord blood and tissue with Anja. All right. Let's get back to the story. Okay, so you get pregnant again. How do you find out you're having twins?
Well, I had a miscarriage right before, and it just at 8 weeks, like normal miscarriage time. But then we learned when we went into the like ultrasound. So then I'm going back into we get pregnant again right away, go back into the ultrasound. I don't even have my husband come this time because like we were stupid. We had Otis in the first ultrasound. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. It was all good. We had a ceremony and life is life. So I go into this ultrasound and she just is like, yeah, there's one. And then there's the other heartbeat. I was like, I'm sorry, what? And we called my husband. I don't have fraternal twins in the family. I wasn't on any hormones. I was doing a ton of acupuncture, but I think mainly I was like almost 40 and your body's like, let's get these eggs out of here.
Yeah.
Now or never.
We drop eggs like crazy.
We're dropping them. So then we found out early, like at 9 weeks. It was insane. I mean, we're both full-time musicians. Like our lifestyle, it seemed crazy to have a second child to everyone we knew. And then now we're having twins. But lucky for us, COVID hit and we couldn't even tour. So we've just been pleasantly at home. Yeah. So these guys, once I was like 6-7 months pregnant, I couldn't do anything. Like I couldn't walk up the street. I had a friend who had a pool and I would get in the pool once a day for an hour and that helped, but I couldn't move. I mean, I did think about doing a home birth, especially with COVID. I was like, should I do this home birth? And my midwife that I was going to work with, which was a midwife wing of the hospital, she was like, I had twins myself, blah, blah, blah. I hear the stats. You want to be in the hospital just in case. And because I had already done a home birth, I was like, I trust myself. I trust myself that I can do this and I'm not going to be like pushed around by anyone. And I'm working with a midwife practice and like, it'll be fine. I don't want that extra stress. It just seemed a little too stressful to do it at home. Now I carried them to 38 weeks and then I just like lost it. I was like, they need to come out now. Like so much, I was just in so much pain all the time. So
explain that though, like pelvic pain, emotional pain.
Pelvic pain, like only comfortable, like lying on my side in bed and barely comfortable there. And again, I do not complain about physical. Well, these two stories suggest otherwise, but in general, I'm pretty tough physically. And like I said, the first pregnancy was nothing. This second pregnancy was gnarly. And lower pelvic pain and nothing wrong, right? Like no diabetes, but my brother would be like, what's with your ankles? Those are not your ankles. I was like,
Varicose
know.
veins in your vagina? Did you get any of the varicose veins in your vulva?
I didn't see, I don't know, but I did get some gnarly prolapse, which I've now got a cool exercise for, like the Spanish do. But yeah, so it was very unpleasant. And I was starting to be like, I need them to come out like and they will not induce, it's a hospital. So they're going to make sure they induce you by the end of 38 weeks anyway. So the midwives were like, you can wait. And I was like, I'm going in at 38 weeks. But because I'd had a home birth the first time, this is not ideal. I didn't even know what Pitocin does. Like, I didn't know anything. I was just like, do whatever. It's time to go. So I was on Pitocin for 24 hours and nothing happened.
Okay. So I am going to break in right here.
Please do.
Because if you hire a doula, y'all, if you
I know.
or send this podcast episode to one of your friends that you know that's having twins. Okay. Yeah. So first of all, I'm going to pitch a little something for myself. I do virtual birth planning for anyone around the world. Okay. Mm-hmm. So this is something that I love doing. So let's say you had called me. We would have spent about 6 hours over 2 or 3 different prenatal appointments preparing you for an induction. All the things. What Pitocin does, the pros and cons, the risks and benefits. I also would have told you that an average induction is 3 to 5 days. So I have no idea where we're going with your story, but I would have told you if your body is not ready and right, you can do everything. Your body won't respond to any of it.
It didn't.
So there's stages, right? I'm going to let you tell your story of your journey, but I wanted to interject to talk a little bit about an induction, right? There are drugs called prostaglandins that we can use, Cervidil, Cytotec. There's a Cook's catheter, a balloon that can soften and dilate the cervix. There's a lot of journeys. So it's really important if you're having a planned induction, as Molly is telling us right here, to know a little bit about what might go on and how long it could take, Yeah. So you get to the hospital and they start with Pitocin. They didn't do any cervical ripening medicines?
No, I think I was 3 centimeters when I got there.
Okay. So
3.5 when I got there. And it just never moved, though. It didn't. And I hadn't really been having Braxton Hicks. I didn't have it that time. And I carried Otis to almost 40 weeks. So this is 38 weeks. So it's earlier, right? But everybody says they're twins. I just assumed they'd come out by themselves at 36, 37, like everyone else's do.
Oh my God. I love you. We just had twin home births at 41.
Oh my God.
They were 7, 12, and 7, 14.
Mine was 8 and 6.5.
No, you are kidding me.
So they were already effing way too big.
You had an 8-pound twin at 38 weeks. No wonder you couldn't move. You had over 20 pounds of baby fluid and placenta.
Yeah, it was way too much. So that's what I'm saying. It was a lot. Whoa. So again, yes, I wish I should have talked to people beforehand. All's well that ends well. So what happened is, so I went in. By the way, we know that twin number 2 is heads up. We know that she's breached. But they're like, it's fine if the bottom one's heads down. We can go vaginal birth. It's not going to be a problem. And so after 2 days of the heaviest dose Pitocin, they're like, this is when the doctors get in. They're like, we're not really reaching our goals, so we need to break your water now. And I was like, it's 10 p.m. I haven't slept in 48 hours because I'm stuck. There are so many sticky things to me, right? All the fetal heart monitoring. Every time I move, another nurse has to come back and replace the fetal heart monitoring thing is horrible. It's just sticky and annoying, but It was not pleasant. So that was a very unpleasant couple days. I was like, no, I am not getting my water broken right now. Take me off everything and let me sleep. So they did.
Good job, Molly.
But dude, I had to send them back 3 times because I was so tempted to do what they wanted. They were literally like, well, we have all these women outside waiting to birth. We're going to have to give up this room. If you go off the drugs, you'll probably lose your bed in this room. So I was like, go back out and I'll come back in 5 minutes. I'll tell you. And then I was like, no, come back in another 5 minutes. I'll tell you. And I just got so quiet and I'm like, no, I'm not going to do that right now. I can do this. I'll let them break my water. But I remember last time my water got broken. So this is what I'm thinking. Once you break my water, I'm just going to get punched in the face with those contractions. So anyway, I slept a little better that night. And then in the morning they came in and they're just like, we'll either, and during that 2 days of nothing happening, I did start to say we all know this is going to a C-section, so maybe that's just what we should do. And the midwives were like, no, that wasn't your plan. And I'm like, okay, fine. Like, so I was just I just got so over it. But then I'm really glad it worked out this way. And they broke my water. And, 4 hours later, I started contracting. And now this is where I do feel lucky. And I know there are probably not great things about this, but again, it was the midwife who had had twins herself. And she was like, that second baby's heads up. They're going to go in with their hands to get her out. And like, you might consider an epidural. Like you don't have to, but like, if you're thinking about it, like you might. And if you're going to get one anyway, you could just get one when when you think you need it, and not like wait till the end and the other thing was like, if you don't get the epidural and you have twins and they do have to do a C-section, then they have to knock you out completely. And I was like, the risk of getting knocked out completely, like I really don't want that to happen. So fine, let's give a little epidural. It was similar to the first one in that once my contractions hit, they did hit at like a 7, out of 10 pain.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got to an 8. And Evan's like, call for the epidural. And I was like, no, I can do it. And this is where I noticed how mental it is, right? Because I was feeling those feelings and doing the whole,
Yeah.
and then, but this time I was like, help is on the way. I'll call the epidural whenever I want. I've already called. They're on the way. So then halfway through, like it wouldn't hurt as bad because I just like knew help is on the way.
Yeah.
And so I wish of course that would be the ideal if you could tell yourself through anything, but I didn't have those skills the first time around. So it still took them literally an hour and a half to get there. So I had plenty of like hardcore labor, and then I had the epidural, and then I fell asleep. And when I woke up, it was time to push the baby out. And I pushed the first one out in 4 pushes.
Who came first?
Manny was heads
came
down.
first. Okay.
Manny's head is the 99th percentile and still is. He was the 8-pound baby.
So he was the 8-pound baby. Okay.
So he's just barreling down. And it was so great. This is where I felt victorious. I mean, it was insane to be wheeled into this you have to be in the operating room. There's no like cozy midwife. You're like full on operating room, crazy lights, no fewer than 12 like suited up people in their like COVID hazmat suits. It's so insane. But I was just like, here we go. Like, this is how we're doing it. And so 4 pushes, I could see everybody get so excited. They're like, oh my God, yes, like here comes baby. So then I hold little baby number 1, and he's like he is to this day, just screaming his head off. He's just like so miserable. And I'm just like, shh, 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 shh. And then what I found out later was that doctor on call did not do breech births. Like he wouldn't do them. And so they called these other 2 specialist ladies. So I can just hear them, and they're looking at the monitor, and they're like, I think I got a foot. Okay, I got a foot. All right. And now I got a hand. They just pull her out. She's a footling breech, but they go in and they pull her out. She's out 4 minutes later. And I just have to say this because she's still like this. She does not cry. The cord is wrapped around her neck, but that doesn't hurt her. But she doesn't cry, and they're rubbing her. And finally she goes, rah, rah. And that was it. And then she just goes on my chest. And I was like, what is this calm baby? Like I've never had a calm baby. So that was it. That was the actual labor part was easy peasy. Again, I'd had an epidural. So like that pain wasn't happening. But then you're in a hospital, and it really stinks to be in a hospital for the next like day and a half. That part was awful. I just wanted to be home. So it was
so
what
they
it was.
didn't let you do anything with your placentas? You couldn't?
No, they literally said we have to go like study them or whatever. We need to send them to the lab.
I would have gone to battle. I'm so sorry.
Bull.
But, at least you got that on your, you had those choices on your first one.
Yeah.
I continue to do this podcast and say these things because if you really want your placenta, y'all fight for it. It's your
totally.
organ. You know what I mean? Like, try to say I'm sure there's a form that I can sign that's against medical advice and, that says this organ belongs to me and I'd like to take it. So sometimes when we just put up a little bit of a fight, sometimes you're like, I just had 2 babies and I'm tired and I don't feel like having that. That's not worth it to me. But if it is something you want, anyone listening, speak up, ask for it, get it. So were you able to nurse both?
Yeah, I was able to nurse, although just like the first one, like I'm really lazy when I'm tired, so they don't get a good latch. So then I'm all bloody. So then I have to like do some syringe feeding. And then like, this was my pattern both times. Yeah. So then we get them nursing, but it takes a little while. I think probably because the induction or always for the milk to come in. I don't remember this being a thing with my son, but when you're doing two babies and they're both crying, it's like literally you might sleep for 15 minutes and then you will be woken up again. So it's not like, oh, you sleep for 2 hours and then you get woken up. Like, no, you maybe sleep for 20 minutes. So it's really, really, really intense. And I just had people be like, if you need to supplement, and I was like, yeah. Like my milk is coming in, but like we're getting that German Holly brand, like goat milk
Everybody
formula.
has Holly.
Everyone has Holly.
All my doula clients have Holly.
We spend all our money on the Holly. And then, so I had a little bit of supplementing and then I was nursing and I was always also trying to pump to get it in. So this is weird. Well, whatever. I'll just out myself. Like with my first son, I nursed him till about 2 years. And that was exclusively till he got food. And then with these guys, after several months, like it turned into just pumping. So I still pump 7 times a day and they are mostly breastfed and they're mostly milk. But like I transitioned away from actually nursing them. And people will tell me, oh, well, the milk is what's important. And I'm like, no, I don't buy that. I think there's attachment in actually nursing. But for me, for like how hard it was to get any sleep for like this time, I needed Evan to be able to feed one. I needed to be able to sleep from like 4 to 8 in the morning. Like I just needed one stretch of 3 hours and you can't get that with twins. It just like went where it went. Like I was a little bit conflicted and sad that I didn't maintain nursing longer. But at the same time, like there was so much relief around it too, that was just my story. And there's a million things we can make ourselves feel guilty about. Like I can feel guilty that I had an epidural and I can feel guilty about this, but like also I have twins and it's really hard. And so I'm just going to do my best. And you know what? I'm actually really happy with my twins. Like I was slightly more, well, no, probably a lot better rested. My body came back faster, which is surprising, but I don't know. Like I was walking around in the next couple days. Like I'm glad I didn't have a C-section because I didn't have a scar to heal. That's hard.
I think that you did an amazing job, Molly. I think you are doing an amazing job. I think just the thought of twins for most of us is like I don't even know how we could survive it. I mean, I had one and I only made it, the first one never nursed and I pumped for like 5 months. And then I was like, F it. And I'm a doula, you know what I mean? I'm like, my job is to like help people nurse for like a year. And that, I love what you said. Like, it is what it is. Let it be. Each of us has our own journey. And I wanted to just ask you before we go to, like, how old are they and how are you doing now?
Yeah. Well, I'm doing really well. I mean, they are 8 months old and we had for a while during COVID, you couldn't get a babysitter or anything, but I would have like a different family member staying with us. And that was essential. And my husband also like works part-time from home. So like we really do split care, like 100, it's 50-50 for sure. And so that is just like, that means I'm great. I'm much better than I was with my one singleton son when I was doing like really, I was nursing him all night long. He never slept through the night. Like these babies are already kind of sleeping more through the night. So I'm doing surprisingly well. And it's because of the help. Yeah. It's just because of the help.
Yeah.
And my family.
I have another quick question about just being a musician in COVID. Ooh. How much has this impacted your business, your income? Like, how are you still? I mean, I know you're doing your weekly Patreon, but no touring at all?
No tour. We are just starting to book some outdoor concerts this summer. We'll see how they go one at a time. And of course, we didn't tour for a year, but thank God for me, like, because I had twins. And my husband got a producing job. He did a little more teaching. Like I said, I have my Patreon thing. We have really low overhead. Like we just always set our lives up so that we could, have a low overhead and had some savings and we're okay. And just doing it. And I can be really we're still being creative and making music. So I can't complain, but of course it's impacted musicians like 1,000%.
Yeah, I know. I was like my friend Bucky and a couple of my other musicians, and then my friends who are like in the service industry, like waiters.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I just feel like I'm busier than ever as a doula. Everyone's getting pregnant, I'm looking at other industries and seeing like, how are you doing this? And
Yeah.
I really miss the outdoor music scene. So hopefully we're getting back to it. Molly, it's been amazing to just chat with you and to hear your birth stories. And I'm so thankful that we connected. What is your favorite baby product?
Okay, now since you've been so honest, I'm not going to feel. I'm sorry for any mamas if I laid on the mom guilt about like, oh, I wish I could have done it better, blah blah. It's a
We
hard thing to
all
shake.
have it.
It's a hard thing to shake. So anyway, my favorite baby product. You need to beg, steal, or borrow. You need to ask all your family for help with this. But I rented 2 snooze, and I don't know what people are going to think about them. But with twins, these little robotic bassinets, I co-slept with Otis till forever. He still needs an adult to sleep in his room with them, and he's 5. But these babies sleep very happily on their own, and they always slept in the snoo. And we had it right when we got back from the hospital. You like zip them in, it shushes them down, and then they transitioned pretty much fine into their cribs at 6 months. And it just meant you could sleep for that extra like 20 minutes. And I think the worst thing about the snoo, again, is like parent guilt. Like, oh, I should have been able to rock them down. But you're like, well, you had to sleep. So that made the twin thing much more doable.
You are about the 100th person to say the snoo is their favorite product. And I'm jealous. I mean, my youngest is 5 and I'm like, oh man, where was the snoo 5 years ago?
It wasn't there. It was not there 5 years ago.
And you know, the maker of the snoo is the guy, I don't remember his name, but from the Happiest Baby on the Block, like with the 5 S's or whatever. So that's his company who made the snoo. So they turned that concept of those 5 S's into a, like you said, a machine that they sleep in, like a robotic bassinet. It's amazing.
I know. I feel like there's just nothing else that is like as important. Like anything else, you figure out what your baby likes to chew on or whatever, natural rubber teether, but nothing else, matters as much as that sleep.
For you too, right?
For me. Yeah, for me.
All the time, the moms about postpartum anxiety, postpartum depression, weight gain, you name it. I'm like, sleep is going to cure most of those things for you. So,
yeah. And so that's where, again, it's like pumping is kind of crappy, although pumps have gotten better. And I would just wear the bra and like once I felt good, and I had the pump in a fanny pack. So I'm literally like doing stuff while I pump. You will see me, like I'll type on the computer while I pump. I will make a meal while I pump. And that way, or just use formula, whatever. But that way, like get your husband to do some feeds in the night. Like, I don't know why I never did that with Otis, but not just your husband, your partner, like get any help to do the feed during the night so you can sleep.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. And if any of you guys want to stick around for another couple of minutes and hear one of Molly's songs, it's coming up next.
I think I'm gonna let you hear. This is called Lost and Found, and I wrote it for Otis when he was just a few months old. So you'll have all the new mama feels.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Heidi.
All right. Have a great day, Molly.
I'm lost in your gaze, in your smell, in your touch. I'm lost in the bittersweet feeling of loving this much. And it hurts to have you need me this way. And it hurts to know you will leave me someday. I give it, I take it. I know there'll be days, there'll be moments we break it, but I want it, I need it. All the love here between us, I drink it, I breathe it. Now I see how my heart is fully undefended, and I feel I am forever reoriented. Ooh. see every change, and I listen for your sounds, 'cause I'm here and you're here. I'm awake and you're loved, and I'm lost and I'm found.
All right, don't forget to head over to useanja.com. That's useanja.com, and use code BIRTHSTORY for $100 off when you choose cord blood banking privately with UseAnja. Thanks for listening to this week's episode, and we will see you next week. Thank you for listening to Birth Story. My goal is you will walk away from each episode with a clear picture of how labor and delivery might go, and that you will feel empowered by the end of your pregnancy to speak up, plan, and prepare for the birth you want.